Ben, any ideas?
Yeah, always, but, I mean, like earlier, sort of, Henrik, when you mentioned, sort of whether it was a time now, sort of when we needed to make our decisions and, sort of whether we have to go with this or whether we're going to end up, sort of chopping wood like Alan Watt and living in a shack. Mm-hmm. Well, quite frankly, I am going to be living in a shack at some point because, as I say, I mean, I've told everybody really. I don't have a job, Henrik, really as such anymore. I mean, now I'm a full-time researcher, living exclusively on the charity of good souls like yourself and everybody listening. And so, if I could just say, if there's anybody who wants me to talk at their conference, anybody that wants me to, in some way, speak out against this, speak out, not speak for it, mate. Speak out against this vile, abominable, this utterly satanic, this despicable sort of reptilian presence, then I'm more than willing to do it. And here's something else as well. I mean, I'm going to end up on streets or in prison or in a shack simply because, you see, I'm not going to carry the card. I'm not going to take the mark of the beast upon myself. I'm not going to be.
Are you at this point at least? Are anyone forcing this upon us now? I mean, if we talk about the now and the choices that we're standing in front of now, I mean, it is still possible to be a part of the society, if that is what we want to be, of course. It's still it's still possible to be a part of it, but we don't have to go along with their game just because they have ideas about it. What do you think?
Sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm a bit more sort of, maybe I'm a bit of an extremist. I've no idea. But I mean, as I say, I mean, I've never really got on with society generally. I mean, yes. It is possible to, yes, of course, right now, yes, we're talking about, if you talk about, I mean, I'm looking into the future. I'm not looking, tens and hundreds of years into the future. I'm looking in our lifetimes. In our lifetimes, this thing is going to either play out or it's going to fail. And I'm going to be a part, if I can be, I'm going to be part of the movement which ensures that it fails. And I'll die for that.
Well, exactly. But that's a very good point, because what you're saying there is that you are the one who is creating the world that you want to live in, right? That you have the opportunity and ability to form the world that you want to be in because of the actions that you take, right?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I'm an individual, and I don't have too much. I don't have too much faith in sort of collective action.
Sure, but I mean the world that. If we talk about the world that the future that they want to have, that you're up, against, obviously, then
I am against.
Absolutely,
I am against.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then that hasn't happened yet, and the opportunity now is that we can prevent that from happening, right?
Yes, we can. But I mean, I have to deal with my own sort of martyrdom complex, and I know that is. I mean, this is just part of my. This is sort of part of my makeup, as it were. I mean, I tend to look at this agenda. I tend to look at the reptilian agenda as this massive, overbearing rollerball that is going to destroy me, and it will destroy everybody else, apart from people who, in some ways, roll over for it, who bend over for it, who in some way compromise for it, who in some ways spiritually take upon themselves that mark of the beast and actually become Antichrist. And I'm simply stating the fact that even though I feel, and yes, it is negative, it's deeply negative, but I feel it's going to destroy me, but I would rather be destroyed than in any way than compromise to it. I despise it, and moreover, I'm not so in love with this world. I'm not so in love with this planet. I'm not so in love with humanity. I'm more than willing to. I'm more than willing to sort of move on.
Sure, Jake. Is this? Do you think that this is a time where we can, form more and more the world that we want to live in the future?
Oh yeah, I mean, everything is coming into focus, and we'll all have a good laugh about these serious, subject matters when it all does. It'll be like just there's this understanding growing, and at the moment it's just so. It's like that moment of tension just before something snaps. So there's so much energy in the system, so it feels like unbearable. It's like it's about to spark. And that's why everything is just so tense, and people are so full of fear and full of worry and full of
is this
all this stuff. It's just the image is about to take shape, but we're right on that cusp, and it might be a year or two or something like that. But it's really forming, and I think we'll soon just see the joke for what it is, and we'll all have a good laugh.
Is this?
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Could it be that this is a kind of a way for us as a the human race to kind of process what is going on in that sense and what is happening to us and where we are going? That what I'm trying to say here is that everything that is playing out in the world is a form of what do you call it? A psychological analysis, and this is a way for us to kind of process all the stuff that is going on. It's a way to actually come in contact with these things that we fear, and we must do that in order for if things happen in the future and a thing like the singularity happens or whatever, then everything is going to be instantaneously happening at once, and all of our fears is going to be poured out with all of our joys and happinesses once as well. But we have to process even our dark side, so to speak. Do you think that is the case, Jake?
Yes, I believe that whatever we can't deal with personally, in our own, what we can't work through, if you're sitting calmly at home and you feel this tension inside of you and you just don't know what it is, you can't analyze it. It's too personal or it's too close to trauma or something like that. You can't resolve this tension. It will come out in the theater of the real world. And this is what's happening collectively with humanity.
Yeah.
We are not coming to terms with our fears, our repressed sexuality, all these subject matters, and it's manifesting as chaos on the world. And it's a healthy process if this is what we need. Personally, I don't believe we need war and famine and death and all that kind of thing.
Sure.
But whatever the collective pool decides is necessary will happen. It will be manifest, and we will work through it by hook or by crook. It's like it's inevitable. So you can just be present and
Ben, what about that idea that what we're experiencing now, and we can, I guess, tie this in also with the power structure and the idea of the reptilian agenda, that what we're experiencing now is a kind of a processing of this information. We're processing the experience, and even this is a way for us to learn how to deal with it in a responsible way, and this kind of is also a reflection of our dark side of our fears. What's your ideas about that?
Yeah, I think that certainly. I mean, I mentioned earlier that it has to begin. I mean, if we're looking at solutions, of course, it has to begin, I believe, within the self. And obviously, Michael Tessarian has spoken about this at length, as have others. And it seems to be very common sense, doesn't it? That it has to begin with us. It has to begin with the individual, with self-work in some way. I wholly agree. I understand that we are going through a kind of underworld journey collectively as a race, as a people, as a one people. Yes, of course, I believe in that. I believe. I share sort of so many things in common with Jake, for example. I mean, I don't want to see yet more war, yet more suffering, yet more injustice. And yet there are people who do want to see these things. I mean, for example, Jake mentioned earlier, and I'm not dissing the guy, of course we all understand, but, for example, sort of Jake mentioned the Order of the Skull and Bones, and sort of said that this is not powerful magic that these guys are performing. Well, I have a feeling that Mr. Prescott Bush might disagree. I mean, here are people. These are people who worship death. They worship all the things which we, Jake, and Henrik and the listeners despise. Of course, we don't like suffering. We don't like injustice and agony and pain and hunger. But believe me, Mr. George Bush and his father before him and Mr. Blair and his friends, they do. They
Absolutely.
actually worship it.
Absolutely. Could it be also, if we try to tie these ideas together here, could it be that we are now in front of a situation here where George Bush and all these evil characters are a reflection of our own, what I'm trying to say here is that could we have created them in that sense? I mean, they're there now in a position, and it's up to us to actually, first of all, deal with it. Or first of all, we have to recognize it. That's the first thing, and that's what the majority of people doesn't do right now. They don't even face that there is a dark ruling hand, over the planet Earth. But that doesn't mean that they actually are in ultimate control of it. That only expresses the idea that, okay, once we recognize it, we have the power to actually change it and do something about it,
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I certainly agree that I agree that we have created this. We have created it. But, you see, this is a very interesting point. We haven't really got time to sort of talk about the full consequences of this. But, you see, so once you create something magically and astrally, it takes on a life of its own. And we have created this monster, which is called the global elite, and those persons that I mentioned before, and what they represent, and who is controlling them, what is controlling them. Ultimately, I believe that, yes, we have created this. I don't personally... Really? I believe that we have created it. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that they created us, although, sort of physically speaking, in terms of the forensics of ancient history, that may be true. Mm-hmm. But sort of magically speaking, in terms of what resonates with me meaningfully, I believe that we created them. We created this. We've created what we have, what we're now experiencing.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But as I say, what happens once you create anything, even like a blog, even like Red Eyes Creations and so forth, it actually starts taking on a life of its own. And certainly in the case of the global elite, it has taken on a life of its own. It's been imbued with diabolical energy from the very lowest, strata of hell, and now all of us have been crucified as a result. And how are we going to get over that? Ultimately, 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 it is more powerful than us. It's more powerful than me. I can't fight this monster, this machine alone. It would crush me. It would destroy me. But nonetheless, I and you and Jake and everybody listening has something which they do not have, and it's called a soul.
You think that's interesting? So you think that the controlling force, or are you talking about the human faction of the controlling elite now, or?
Well, I'm talking about what they represent and who and what is controlling them. I'm really not talking about individuals. I mean, I talk about Prescott Bush and Tony Blair,
sure.
And I'm on record as saying Tony Blair's a practicing Satanist and a war criminal. If that's libelous, well, Mr. Blair, you have my email address. Let's have it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care. I've got no money, mate. But I'm not really talking about individuals. I'm talking about what controls them, what they represent. I'm talking about something behind them, something invisible, occult. It's black. It's blacker than black, and it's huge. And yes, we have projected it. We have projected it. And equally, yes, I do agree with Jake that it is something which we can kill, or or in fact we can transmute, which is more important. But unfortunately, in terms of the messages being transmitted into our sort of forebrains, sort of through the mainstream media and so forth, mind control to the nth degree. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I don't think I'm going to live sort of to see that day. I think it's much more likely in my life, sadly, and I'm talking about my life only, I'm probably going to be crushed on the wheel.
Do you think, Ben, that this is a force that we have to fight with, physical violence?
Well, I don't know, because if I did say that, I would be in trouble, and I don't wish to be in further trouble, sir. I don't wish to be in. I mean, maybe I'm feeling a little bit tender, a little bit paranoid, to be perfectly frank, Henrik, because I have been in trouble this week, and I don't like being in trouble with the forces of law and order. That is the last thing I like.
Sure.
And yet, nonetheless, I keep